You know, these days it's very easy to get sucked into the retro gaming rabbit hole, and I am very guilty of that myself, but there are certain titles when they come up and are available for sale that you go, yeah, I gotta get that sucker, I love that game. One of those games is Outrun from Sega, and Sega has just released this for the Sega Ages brand that they have. They've got a bunch of other titles out there, I think Phantasy Star is one of them. But Outrun is a very accessible arcadey racing experience. It was in arcades, it was developed by the master Yu Suzuki, and it's a perfect fit on the Nintendo Switch platform. I've always dug this game. They've converted it into other types of Outrun experiences in the past. They updated it a few years ago, and I really enjoyed that. It's basically a choose-your-own-adventure racing game where you get from point A to point E, I believe, and you've got to kind of take a decision as you get to the checkpoint of every chunk of the game, whether you go left or right, and that's going to lead you into different areas. That's the world-famous steam clock going off behind me, by the way. And so what you do is you decide which path you're going to take, and depending on what path you're going to take, you're going to see some different obstructions. You might see some beach huts, you might see some ancient ruins, you might see a desert track for a little while, or the mountains, or city levels. It's all kind of rudimentary sprites that are coming at you in a pseudo 3D kind of way, but it's an effective, even in this day, even in 2019, it's an effective use of visual streaming coming at you. Yes, it looks dated. Yes, it looks blocky and chunky. But yes, it's still exhilaratingly fast, and it still hurts you physically when you smash into the side of the road and your Ferrari flips over end, and your passengers flip out. And then they get back in and they're just screaming at each other, and then they keep going on their path, and they're avoiding trucks and they're avoiding other cars. Everything's all blocky. Now, what they've done with this game, which they're doing a lot with the Sega Ages, is they've let you enjoy the content in a bunch of different ways. You can shrink the aspect ratio to go back to the 4:3 kind of perspective that the game initially launched at. You can kind of put it into a black space with no border around it, or you can put in a bunch of different kinds of borders, like an arcade cabinet kind of example, or a deluxe arcade cabinet. You can go full widescreen and take over the entirety of your television, which is a bit disorienting because the pixels just get bigger, and so it's just a huge blocky kind of chunk coming at you, and super fast, by the way. So it's just like, whoa, man. And I think one of the last times that I played Outrun was in 3D on my 3DS, and so when I saw all of this stuff coming at me, it flashed me back to that 3D. So even though this is not a 3D game, it kind of feels like a 3D game because everything's coming at you so quickly. But you can also add scan lines or smooth everything over, and you can listen to that sweet, sweet music that's a part of the Outrun franchise as well. And you can adjust the difficulty as well. You can choose to make it much simpler by taking a lot of traffic off the road, or increase the time limits so that you can see as much of it as you want to. So you've got a bunch of different ways to play it. And of course, this is a Switch game, so it's great on a television, and it's especially great when it's in handheld mode because the pixels kind of shrink a little bit and the detail looks a little bit tighter and nicer. And it's frankly just a fantastic trip down memory lane that doesn't cost you that much. And it's one of those titles that it's a racing game, but it stops traffic. I pay attention when Sega re-releases an Outrun game. I would love for them to completely modernize this franchise and give us a new variation on the theme. I think Outrun is it's a seminal racing game in a crowded field. Let's be honest, there are lots of excellent racing games over the years, but there was something very fresh and exciting and just joyful about what Outrun was. Survive as long as you can until the meter runs out, the time runs out, hit those checkpoints. And see as much of the game as you can on one quarter, or in this case, with as few restarts as you need to.
Congratulations!
I had a tremendous time jumping back into Outrun. Of course it looks dated, but if you know that going in, I think you're going to love this too. It's a great fit on the Switch. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.